It's time for Making Connections, and today our guest, well, she grew up as a child prodigy in violin. Tricia Park graduated from the Juilliard School of Music and received her MFA in writing at the School of Art Institute of Chicago. So fueled by her inner creativity and curiosity, she decided to embark on a new adventure by returning to her roots in Korea. She's a Fulbright grant awardee in creative writing and working on her first book. Tricia is also on faculty at the music department at the University of Chicago. So we're very excited to have her join us on the show and talk about her life and also connect the dots between creativity and curiosity. So good morning, Tricia, and welcome to Life Abroad.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm pleased to be here.
It's a great pleasure to have you on the show. You were saying right before we went on air that you have been on radio before, but first time in Korea.
Yeah, I mean, I think years ago I did an interview, but this is the first time I'm doing live radio in Korea.
Yes, that's what we like to hear. First time with us. So welcome to the show. So I was introducing you, and actually that was a condensed version. You have many hats: violinist, educator, writer, also the host and producer of an original podcast called Is It Recess Yet? Confessions of a Former Child Prodigy. I was expecting someone in her 70s, but you're definitely not anywhere near that. So much that you have done and an amazing sort of career even so far. So I guess we'll have to talk about all of that, and we will, but there is a lot to unpack. And let's start at the beginning then. I guess we have to start with your career as a violinist, a child prodigy. How did you pick up the violin? And let's talk about that journey first.
The violin was just kind of a thing that I did, like most kids, I mean, certainly in Korea do, but it was an extracurricular, sort of like, you might be a swimmer.
Did your parents have something to do with it? Maybe nudge you in that direction?
I've been really lucky that my parents have never been like the stereotypical kind of like hovering parent.
Oh.
And so my mother in particular read somewhere, I think, that like stringed instruments were good for kind of brain development and helps with school and focus. And so just really because she's great and my parents are great, that they just wanted to give us a chance to do this thing. And then it kind of snowballed from there.
Did you feel that you had a natural talent for it? Did you fall in love with the instrument right away?
Yeah. I mean, for me, the relationship is a little bit complicated only because I've been doing it like really my whole life. And so I don't feel like there was a moment for me anyway where I was like, oh, I really love this. But it's just always a thing that's been part of my life. So it's almost like an extension of me, almost part of my body.
Because I did hear that you started at age 5. I can't remember what I ate or did at age 5, and yet you picked up the violin for the first time at age 5. So obviously there must have been some sort of, I guess, natural talent. Do you have music in your family? Or?
No, I'm kind of the weird alien in my family. My brother is very musically talented, I think more than me, but chose to not do it professionally. But no, I think that I had sort of like a physical aptitude because the violin is actually quite difficult instrument to play. It takes a long time to even be able to hold it properly because it's quite awkward. So
at age 5 too, I imagine.
Yeah, and actually that's not even really that young. I'm sure that there are kids here in Korea who are starting as young as 2 or 3. And
really?
But the piano is much easier because you from day one you can like play something, but the violin takes a long time to make a sound and it sounds really terrible for a long time. So
Yeah, I think I can attest to it sounding terrible. I've heard a couple of people try to pick it up and then they gave up pretty quickly after hearing themselves actually. But did you love it? I mean, obviously it is a difficult instrument to play, but as a young child, and it almost seems like you kind of grew up with it. It was a natural extension almost of your body. But wasn't there ever a time when you're like, I don't want to do this anymore? I was too young when you made me start this. And did you rebel and say, no, not for me anymore? I want to try something else.
Yeah. I mean, I know that that's been the experience for a lot of folks who start things early. So maybe ballerinas or ice skaters or gymnasts, certain athletes and classical musicians, I think have a lot of overlap because you have to start really young in order to achieve mastery because it's so difficult. These are very difficult, demanding disciplines. I definitely never had anybody pushing me, but I certainly had and continue to have moments where I'm just like, this is so hard. I don't know if I want to keep doing this. But I've learned a lot about discipline and problem solving and critical thinking from having this be a part of my life. And it's a little hard to say chicken or egg. I think that somebody who does go into something like this for the long haul probably has a predisposition in their personality where they can endure delayed gratification. They have like attention to detail. They are maybe a little bit perfectionistic. So those are all, of course, assets, but also can become a little bit problematic if it gets too big.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think you need, like you say, maybe some great supportive parents, a wonderful teacher, a mentor who will also continue to encourage you. But you need that inside you, I think, to continue on as well. You must have been practicing for hours and hours every day. If you're a child prodigy and these opportunities are coming to you, and then you have to practice more and more for that, you're performing at these big stages. The pressure must have been significant.
Yeah, there was a lot of pressure. And I think, the child prodigy label is just kind of a label. I'm not totally comfortable with it, but it's an identifier. People kind of know what that is. And I think that everything, there's a spectrum of what that looks like what that kind of talent is. But I certainly, yes, I had a lot of opportunities, and everything, as I've learned in life, is it's a double-edged, it's good and bad. And it was incredible to have these opportunities, but it did mean that I had a pretty stressful, pressure-filled young life. Yeah.
You receive a lot and you have to give up a lot. You have to sacrifice a lot as well. I mean, you made your concert debut at 13, and then you've performed hundreds of concerts on 5 continents, also received the prestigious Avery Fisher Career Grant. I'm not quite familiar with that as well. We know that it's prestigious, but all of these concerts, a lot in this grant, what did it mean for you? Did you think that, okay, this is my set career, obviously I'm good at it, I've received this grant, I'm going to continue on and be a violinist for the rest of my life? Is that kind of what you thought?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And that's sort of what I was alluding to, doing something from when you're really small. You become kind of identified with it. I think this is a really interesting, challenging, but potentially really an opportunity for musicians and performers in this COVID moment to kind of reimagine what your life can be, because live performance is certainly curtailed for the time being, although it's coming back, but who knows what it'll look like in the future. And I think that if you do something that requires so much attention, something like this, you can get a little bit tunnel vision.
Right.
So that's part of my personal mission and the sort of mission of my podcast and blog, which is to sort of talk about some of those things, how can you start to explore other things in small ways.
Do you continue to play? Do you continue to practice every day?
I don't know if I practice every day anymore, because it's sort of you put money in the bank, and at a certain point you don't have to quite the way I used to.
The interest comes
a little bit. But I do still play all the time. And,
excellent. So I know that you're going to actually be performing for us live, and you brought your violin as well. So if I can ask you to take your position. Tricia Park is going to be playing Unisang's Die Hungrische Katze, which of course is the hungry cat. If you do not understand is that German? It's German, right? Yes. So if we are ready, and if you are ready, all right, let's hear Tricia Park. Yay! Wow. Thank you so much, Tricia. That was wonderful. We don't get a chance to hear a lot of live music at this hour in the morning, but I have to say, I don't know, it's like, I'm not a musical expert, but 약간 답답한 마음, you just kind of like refreshed it, 시원하고, and then you brought some emotions. That was really, really lovely. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Wow. Okay. Well, I hope our listeners got to enjoy that as well. That was a beautiful performance by Tricia Park, The Hungry Cat by Yoonhee Sang. Well, I think we talked about your sort of musical career, and it, of course, is ongoing, but we do have to talk about your many other careers as well. So let's talk about now writing. And I know that from our listeners, 2 of them have already said that they wanted to become a novelist or they want to become a writer. What was it, or when was it, that you decided to pursue a degree in writing? Because I imagine your music was already keeping you very busy. Why writing?
Yeah, so I started writing a little bit in high school, but then because the violin just sort of demanded so much time and attention, a lot of my other interests kind of, were set aside for a while. And then it was only maybe a few years ago that I started like writing just for myself. And then some friends of mine who were kind of serious writers like looked at my writing, and I kind of applied to MFA programs just to see what would happen, just kind of an experiment. And I didn't expect to get in anywhere. And then I had some options, and then there was this opportunity to, an MFA can be a really great, if, I have sort of, there are complex feelings around it, but I think if you have the opportunity to do an MFA in creative writing and it's not a huge financial burden, I think it's an incredible opportunity to like really work on something, without having to think about how do you fit writing into your, real life. You might have a full-time job as an adult like I did. And so like having the opportunity to do it concurrently with my life was a huge gift.
You make it sound very easy,
No.
Tricia.
I don't mean to.
I mean,
I'm sorry.
getting into it. I mean, like I said before, I think a lot of people, and we hear it in the media here, that actually with the corona, I think more people just spending a lot more time at home, lots of introspective thoughts, whether they like it or not, but they're expressing themselves in creative ways, whether it's art or in writing. And so I hear that publishing houses here in Korea, they're actually getting inundated with manuscripts, like the 30-year-old mothers who have become mothers for the first time, and they're sharing their experience, or seniors who are now saying, now that I have all this experience, they're sharing it, or even people who have quit their day jobs and are embarking on this wild adventure. But I don't think that a lot of people, even if they're interested in becoming a writer, they don't feel confident in the content, that they have an interesting story to tell, or they have an interesting story, but they have no idea in how to express it in writing, which can be kind of a daunting sort of form of communication. So tell us, how did you get the confidence to go for this? And then what do you think is it about your writing that also got you into it?
So I want to say, I didn't mean for it to sound easy at all.
No, I'm just joking.
And I feel totally like...
No, I don't mean that.
Right. But I think that's an important point. Like, I think one of my writing teachers has mentioned this writer, Cheryl Strayed, who's like really... kind of famous in the States, and I don't know if she's known here, but she wrote this book called Wild that was made into a film. So she's like a major writer.
Oh, yes. We know the movie anyway. It's Wild.
Yes. And with Reese Witherspoon. And anyway, so she wrote on her Twitter recently, she's starting a new book. She's like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I want to say first that I think and I've been teaching some writing during COVID, and it's been a really wonderful, I love teaching writing because I think I have my own insecurities and I can sort of help other people, I hope. I think it's important to know that everybody is a writer if you realize that writing is just thinking. Like everybody thinks.
Right.
And so everybody does have a story, no matter how small it is. And also to think about, we often think about writing as being like, it's published by a big house and we're like a New York Times bestseller and it's made into a movie. Like that's what a writer is. That's not really like a writer writes. That's all you have to think about. Like a writer writes, a writer thinks, a writer lives, a writer walks. Like this is all writing. That's part of it. It's just, if you think you're a writer, I strongly believe that.
Yeah, sometimes I think that blank piece of paper or your screen can be daunting, but you just have to start. And I think once you start, sometimes that it's half the beginning, right? I mean, really, once you get started, sometimes you just pour out your heart, and it doesn't have to be great, the first draft.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, it's important to know, maybe right at the top of your page, this doesn't count, or nobody's going to see this.
Yeah.
And it's actually almost the physical practice of writing that's the hardest thing. Like if you do it on a computer or if you do it longhand, like just like practicing the violin,
Yeah.
if you make it a regular thing like brushing your teeth or, and I struggle with that too, how to make it regular because of my ego and my insecurities,
Because like you said, many musicians, especially top musicians, they have that perfectionist streak in them, right? So you want to perfect everything that you do. But there are other similarities, I think, that discipline, the daily task that you set yourself to, whether it's violin or writing, that has served you well as well. Do you think the violin helped, or would you, if you could do life over, would you do writing first and then maybe take a violin as a hobby, if that is possible? Or do you think the violin helped to pursue writing?
I mean, I think the short answer is I probably would do it the same way, only because I don't know how helpful it is to think about doing things differently in that particular way. The one thing I would say is I think I would encourage myself, if I met younger Tricia or somebody like me, to take smaller risks sooner, to take smaller, tiny risks sooner. I'm so grateful for what the violin's given me, and it's also given me a story. It's like what I think about and write about. It's like the lens that I look at the world through. So really grateful.
It's part of your identity, right? It's part of your story. Yeah. I want to share some messages from our listeners after your performance. 9910 saying, wow, thanks. Heart, 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 heart. 1213, that was an awesome piece of music. It kind of started my day. Thank you for that live performance. 5624, 악기 연주를 그렇게 하실 수 있다니 정말 부럽네요. 저는 꼭 오케스트라 단원이 되고 싶어요. Also, Elber one of our regular listener, just loves that quote that you said, everything thinks everybody has a story to write. I think that is definitely true, but we just sometimes don't feel that it's interesting enough. Do you think everyone does have an interesting story?
Absolutely. 100, 1,000, 1 billion%. Everybody has a story, yeah.
So tell us about your story. What's this book you're working on?
So kind of like I was alluding to, obviously, like I'm a violinist. It's been a big part of my life. So I'm here. I'm so grateful to be here for a number of reasons. One is that I've never lived in Korea for an extended period. I've only really been in Korea.
Culture shock? Any culture shock?
Yeah, but like yes and no. Okay. So, but the things I'm writing about are kind of like looking at Korean identity, and in particular Korean American identity through the lens of classical music. So that's what I'm working on. But as far as culture shock, like tiny things, like they're so silly. But like the little sarap that you have when you go to the restaurants with like all the silver, like that's not a thing in Korea. Like the ding dong bell, that's, I mean, in America. Like talking to strangers is not a thing here. Yeah. So like, but people have been incredibly kind. So just little things like that. Nunchi, I think is like a big topic.
It's a big topic. I can't wait to see your new book.
Thank you.
You're working on it right now, I imagine, or is it coming out soon?
No.
You're working on it.
Definitely very early stages. It's like more an idea than anything else.
And you'll continue with your podcast here in Korea as well?
I intend to, yeah.
All right. So once again, that was Tricia Park, and her podcast is it Recess Yet? Confessions of a Former Child Prodigy. Tricia Park, thank you. It was a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It was lovely.